Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Web of Conspiracy. I am your host, Adam Webb. It's great to be back with you again this week. Rounding out the conspiracy month of May, today I'm going to be discussing the Bilderberg group. Now, those meetings are occurring right at this moment. They started on Thursday, May 29th, and they're going to last until June 1st. So today's episode I'm going to dedicate to the Bilderberg group, their history, what is it that they do, what is their stated goals? What are their actual goals? We're going to get into a number of different questions about this group. Perhaps to me, one of the more legitimate concerns in the conspiracy realm. So that will be the main topic for today's show. Before I get too far along, once again, I just want to thank everybody who continues to support the show. It's pretty awesome. I certainly haven't expected the kind of support that it's gotten. So I just want to thank everybody once again for continuing to support the show, listening to it, downloading it. I also appreciate all of your feedback in terms of the show as well. Emails, Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome that everyone's been fairly supportive of the show, and I appreciate all the feedback that I do get, and as well as different topic suggestions that a number of you have sent my way. So once again, thank everybody for continuing to support the show. It's pretty cool. So thank you. If you haven't, just a little plug there. Of course, I'm on a number of social media: Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, just the Web of Conspiracy. You'll be able to find it just by searching for it. Also, a dedicated YouTube channel. So for those of you who are avid YouTube listeners and watchers, you can go check the show out on YouTube. Also, if you haven't already been listening, of course, the show is available on downloads through iTunes, as well as through on-demand through Stitcher as well. So that's pretty cool. So you get a chance to check all that out. And I've said in the past, I've got some other plans for the future. So hopefully we continue to expand the show and do some other really cool things there as well. So, okay. A few little topics here I want to discuss in the news, although I wouldn't say little is probably the best word to describe them. So, as it turns out, we've discovered that officials are now saying, well, we have been searching in the wrong area for the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, that we're in the wrong area altogether. So that's why we haven't found it. Is really beginning to feel like there is something more here. Either that or the incompetence is just in tremendously high levels. And I recognize that this is not an easy task, but to be that far off, I'm not sure. I'm beginning to become more suspicious as this goes. So, nevertheless, the saga continues, and it doesn't appear to be any kind of real, true resolution in here. While I think many have come to the conclusion that the flight is, in fact, in the ocean, and everybody's gone, the questions remain. And certainly for those who believe that there is something else going on here, the questions still remain. So I'll continue to update periodically when news comes along in terms of that missing flight, but at this moment there does not appear to be any final resolution involved there for the survivors and the family members and that have been left behind by that strange and unusual event. The other story that I've been following very closely, of course, if you've been listening for the last few weeks, has been the situation in the Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainian military helicopter was shot down by pro-Russian militants. 14 people been killed. So the tension is still there. It's still high. Putin has drawn back approximately about 20,000 forces from the border. So there's still approximately about 10,000 Russian military stationed along the Russian-Ukrainian border. So once again, while Putin does appear to be reining things in a little bit, I would not view this as a de-escalation in reality. Continue to be suspicious. I do believe that he is working to undermine the Ukrainian government through those forces. I do believe that there is some support going on there. To the extent, to the level, I don't know. I don't really have any more information in terms of inside information going on, but I can tell you that I am very suspicious as to whether or not Putin is truly staying out of the situation there. It certainly does not feel like it. So I'll continue to monitor that situation as well. Now, getting into a little bit more of the strange news, there's this story that started circulating, I think, back in February, and I have debated a number of times discussing this on the show, and for one reason or another haven't gotten to it, but it feels like it's an odd story to a certain extent. And I really kind of want the feedback from the audience in terms of whether or not you buy what this is, supposedly. So, back in February, this picture surfaced, and it began circulating around the internet of this patient laying in a hospital bed, that this picture was taken off of a surveillance camera, and that this standing over this patient is this what appears to be a very peculiar-looking entity. Many have described it as a demon. Others have looked at it and decided that this is actually a reaper. So I know this story isn't really new news for those of you who really follow this kind of stuff vehemently, but nevertheless, it's an odd picture. Now, a couple of reasons to be suspicious is that whoever would have taken this picture, being that it's reported, the story goes that a nurse took this photo. I can tell you that this nurse would be violating a number of privacy laws here and could risk losing their license. So, and the fact that this individual is remaining anonymous shouldn't be that much of a surprise. So there could be certainly some legal concerns there for the individual who took this picture. Nevertheless, there's also a number of issues. People have discussed, well, is this a Photoshop? Is this not a Photoshop? And I have said a number of times before on the show, I am not an expert, but I do my best to look at something and try to see. Some Photoshops you can legitimately tell and see, okay, there's something to this. It doesn't look real. There's an obvious mistake made. In this situation, it's a little harder to tell. And of course, it's a photo taken from a security camera, which isn't great quality anyways. So, looking at that, the question then begs, well, okay, is this in fact legitimate, or is this in fact somehow faked, or just... I'm not sure. I really don't know what to make of this. The photo is somewhat intriguing to me at this point. I've looked at it enough, I've debated it enough, amongst myself that I don't really know what to make of it. But so I would really love to get the feedback from listeners, and I'll try to post a link to at least some place where this picture is up on the social media, and you can check it out there. But certainly, if you Google search it, you'll find plenty of hits on it. It is a bizarre picture. To me, when I was looking at it, it almost looked like it was like perhaps a hooded figure. So I could see where the idea of this reaper comes from, that some people argue. But it is peculiar. Nonetheless, it's very peculiar. So, get a chance to check that out. And like I said, I'll try to post some links up on the social media pages later today. So, okay. Well, moving on to the topic for today. The Bilderberg Group. Now, this has been a story that on my old show last year at this time I covered, and this will be a show that I'll probably do every year going forward. This is a peculiar group in that there's a number of questions that we can have about what it is that they actually do. And I'll get into some of the reasons for that as we go along. But they have a significant history. As a matter of fact, this very meeting marks the 60th anniversary of the first meeting of the Bilderberg Group that took place in May of 1954 in Holland at the Bilderberg Hotel, which is where the group eventually took its name from. Now, it is a private conference of over approximately 600 people, and these individuals are leaders in government, politics, finance, business, education, science. There's a number of different fields that these people who come to this conference represent. The idea behind this, at least when it was initially created, was to promote this Atlanticism and curtail any anti-American sentiments in Western Europe. So that was at least the purported idea behind the creation of the group. Now, the group is how it's structured. There's a chairman, there's an honorary secretary general, and there's also a steering committee that organizes the meetings, basically. Okay, the steering committee is comprised of members of each of the 18 nations that attend the conference. And there's also an advisory committee. Now, in terms of understanding everything that all these different groups do, well, it's hard to say. There is a great degree of secrecy in this group. Now, the meetings are guarded by private security, and no one is permitted in. It's invitation only. Press is kept out. Okay? So, matter of fact, there's a story that's been circulating out there already that there's been a couple of reporters who were staying in that same hotel who were arrested and forced to leave the building. So, there's a number of different people out here, discussing the current Bilderberg group meetings, and it's certainly growing in awareness of all the different things in the conspiracy realm. This is one that is definitely gaining a little bit more mainstream attention than perhaps some of the other different stories that are out there in the conspiracy realm. So there's a number of different people out there discussing this. So I'm certainly not reinventing the wheel here, but I am trying to give a little bit of context to what this group has done historically. Now, the group claims that there's this open exchange of ideas to create an understanding of different experiences occurring in these Western nations, and that the reason that the media is kept away is that, well, they want to make sure that they maintain the integrity of this free flow of information, that if by some chance, for some reason, there would be media there, that perhaps some individuals there would be, I guess, feel less inclined to discuss things openly and freely. So it begs the question, what is being discussed that the people would be offended by? So it's an interesting question that we'll come back to. Now, the group is privately funded, and the steering committee members of the host country are responsible for all the hospitality costs. So in this case, in Copenhagen, Denmark, any of the members of the group from Denmark, they're responsible for all the hospitality costs of this meeting. Now, what we have to ask ourselves is, can we trust what information has been provided to us? Can we trust this at face value? Is this group actually what they claim to be? Is this just this idea of exchanging ideas amongst brilliant or successful people, and that they want to do in an open way, and so they don't want to have any other kind of outside influence? Well, many do take this at face value. Many people believe that this is just some elites getting around and having a good time, and just another excuse for a party, so to speak, right? And there's a number of people who look at that and believe that that's wholeheartedly all that the Bilderberg group meetings are. And there are others, however, and myself included, that that are certainly a little more suspicious of what this group actually does. Now, the group contends that it's transparent. They make great efforts on their website to claim this, to argue this. Now, I mentioned their website. Before I get into any more here, I want to tell you that certainly www.bilderbergmeetings.org is their website, and you can go to it. I've been there myself, but I can tell you that they do track you, and there's a number of different things in which you should maybe be a little less certain about going and visiting their website. I think there's a greater degree of risk there based on what I can tell. Nevertheless, everything we do is being monitored these days, right? So what's the difference? I don't know. At any rate, I just wanted to put that out there to people before you go jump on their website, that it does appear that it's heavily monitored and tracked, and it does have a pretty good idea who's coming to visit and who's and how long they're staying. So keep that in mind before you jump onto your browser and decide you want to go check the group out, okay? Now, this group, getting back to this transparency, it provides this press release. It discusses the people attending, and of course the dates of the conference, as well as what, claiming what they're going to discuss, during this time, as well as, it provides an open list of everybody who's a steering committee member, advisory committee members, which, for the record, David Rockefeller is one of the advisory committee members. And I'll get into a list of all the other people who've been associated with this group in the past and currently, for that matter. So they claim that there's all this transparency. The only transparency that they have, at least from my perspective, is that that we have a meeting, and these are the general things we discuss, and I'll get into the topics for this year's conference, and I can tell you that some of it's fairly vague, and they give a list of a number of people who are attending. Now, here's the thing: this is the kicker. Not everybody who attends is going to be listed on that. Certainly, when you're talking about current government members, okay, certainly in the United States, there are laws that claim that public officials have to disclose when they're traveling to other foreign nations, and they have to get that approval first from the United States government. So the question then begs: Are these individuals who are part of the United States government who go, are they actually getting permission? Or are they not? There's some debate there as well. Okay. Here's the thing. The problem that I see is that the reality is that this group is shrouded in mystery, and it's really attempting to cover it in a veil of transparency. Okay. If you've heard the expression, the best liars are the ones that have a little bit of truth in those lies. Those are the best lies, right? Because there's just enough there to make an individual receptive of that lie. And this is a situation where you're looking at a powerful group of people who give you just enough information to make you think that what they're doing is all that they're doing. But they don't really discuss what they're doing. Okay? Now, looking back at people that were chosen, for instance, in 2012 to report at the meeting, they were both writers for The Economist, okay? And then also in attendance was the editor-in-chief of The Economist. And this is the 2012 meetings, okay? So they made sure that they had at least a degree of media contingent there, but it was one that was part of the group and one in which the group could control and steer what was released and what wasn't released, and ensure that nothing else would go beyond that. Any media outside certainly couldn't get any closer than perhaps seeing parts of the building and seeing the vehicles leave and vehicles enter, and that is it. That's all that is ever really seen. So the question here is, do those individuals who attend the meeting and are part of the press, is there a conflict of interest there? Well, there certainly is, absolutely. We can't guarantee that whatever that these writers that represent these institutions that are invited there to be a part of the meetings, we certainly can't buy anything that they may say at face value, and certainly they're prohibited from discussing everything they discuss at face value. So anything that they tell you isn't going to be anything more than what we already know, generally speaking. So the question that many ask, those who are suspicious, is this group preparing for a new world order? Are the ideas that they're exchanging about ways to control the world, to create a one world government, to radically alter the world we live in, and perhaps not in good ways, right? This is the fear of many who look at this and say, okay, what is their true agenda? And when I discuss what they're discussing for this year, there'll be some little bit more reason for concern there as well. Now, for those who value the United States tradition as a republic, this meeting should be a concern. Okay? There should be some concern about government members, people associated with politics, going to these meetings and generating ideas and coming up with different policies and plans, and maybe, perhaps, implementing these things on a large scale without the approval of the people. Now, many have claimed that those who attend the meetings and speak there are often rewarded for in different ways, right? Whether they get political gain, whether they get financial gain, whatever the case may be, that these individuals are often getting their pockets lined, so to speak, right? There are those who claim that when former President Bill Clinton spoke at the meetings in Germany in 1991, this helped launch him, and this, of course, was a year before he was elected, mind you. This helped launch him into becoming the next president of the United States. This was the catalyst for him winning the election. Now, coincidentally, Senator John Kerry attended these meetings in 2012, and of course that was right before his appointment to Secretary of State, replacing Hillary Clinton. So there does appear to be this track record, at least amongst many, of individuals who go there, speak at these meetings, attend these meetings, and then shortly thereafter, usually within a year or so, achieve some sort of career gain or financial gain. Okay. Now, the career gain, many would argue, well, that's just because they made tremendous contacts, and certainly that's a factor, right? Absolutely. But it would appear that on a larger scale that there is something else going on here, because this is happening pretty consistently with a number of people. And those are just two examples. But there's been a number of U.S. leaders that have attended in the past. Henry Kissinger, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Gerald Ford before he was elected president. Okay, so there's a number of individuals who have achieved some sort of significant gain from attending these meetings, and that is what begins to make other people suspicious. Now, let me delve into the 2014 meetings, okay? Now, this is directly from the Bilderberg Meetings website, okay, where they formally announced in a press release that the 62nd Bilderberg Conference is to take place on May 29th through June 1st in Copenhagen, okay? Now, they claim in this year that around 140 participants from 22 countries have confirmed their attendance. Of course, this is questionable, okay? Now, they provide a list of key topics for this year, okay? Current events is one, of course, which is fairly vague and can cover a number of topics. What next for Europe is another topic. The Ukraine, which is certainly a topic we've discussed plenty on this show. New architecture of the Middle East. China's political and economic outlook. The future of democracy and the middle class trap, which I find to be an intriguing subject line. Big shifts in technology and jobs. How special is the relationship in intelligence sharing? And here's a great one. Does privacy exist? Another question. Who will pay for the demographics? And the final question, is the economic recovery sustainable? So there's a number of topics here that caught my attention, and certainly, does privacy exist? Well, that's a great question, and of course I would think that many would argue that only to a certain degree, especially anymore. You have to wonder, well, why is that an important agenda for them? Well, perhaps they're looking for further additional ways to violate privacy, or to minimize what private privacy actually is. The future of democracy and the middle class trap is another one that concerns me a bit. Now, I certainly research the future of democracy. That's one of my primary areas of work. The middle class trap, I find a little disconcerting. The middle class is what really provides the strength, certainly, of the United States. And when the middle class falters, so does the country. And I think that's where we're at right now. And we've seen that pretty dramatically, that the middle class has been squeezed. So I'm really curious as to what their direction, what their ideas are, and what should happen with the middle class. Is the economic recovery sustainable? Another great question, right? So give them props. These are some fantastic questions, but you have to begin to wonder, what is the motivation here? Okay. Is this truly just to discuss these to try to create solutions? Or is it ways for these individuals to profit and gain from these current issues? And it's a great question. And certainly many argue that it really is just a matter of these individuals looking for ways in which to consolidate their power amongst this particular group, to enhance their network of contacts, to build their empires, essentially, okay? That would seem to be one of the biggest concerns for many about this particular group, that this is largely a empire building and consolidating program, that we're trying to focus all the energy in one particular place. Now, there's a number of individuals that are listed in the current list of participants, okay? Internationally, quite a few. And I'm certainly not going to discuss every single one of these names that are on this list, but there are a few, at least a couple, that caught my attention. One of them being Keith Alexander, the former commander of U.S. Cyber Command and the former director of the National Security Agency. Of course, discussing privacy, it would be interesting to have his take on there, considering he doesn't seem to have much concern about it. Okay. Now we move on here. Let's see. And of course, there's a number of international individuals, and I could go through this entire list, but I won't. But the list is out there and I know another number of other people have published this list on their websites. So if you don't want to go to the Bilderberg meetings website and you'd rather go someplace else, I'm sure you'll be able to find it out there if you just do a careful search engine query. Now, another name that caught my attention on this particular list was the former head of the CIA, David Petraeus, who's now the chairman of the KKR Global Institute. He is also going to be in attendance at this particular year's conference. Okay. Now, internationally, there's a number of people. There's people associated with Goldman Sachs, a number of academics, individuals who are lecturers from Stanford University, as well as other people who are representative of different think tanks. So there's a wide variety of individuals. The mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed, is going to be at this year's conference. So that might be a name to keep an eye on in the future, right? When I discussed of course, Bill Clinton's situation came out of nowhere, it would seem, by many. And so keep an eye on that individual's name as we move along here in the next few years and see what happens to him. It'd be interesting to see. There's a number of people internationally as well. Let me see here if I can find some international companies that get my attention. Well, Douglas Flint, the chairman of the HSBC Holdings. Of course, that's a fairly large company, banking institution. Number of different people from around the world in various capacities. Individuals who are representatives of Deutsche Bank. Of course, banking is heavily represented here. So, this is a well-connected group. Now, the number of people and the individuals who come do vary from year to year. They don't always invite back the same people every single year. But the people who are at the core of this, the steering committees, the advisory committees, these are the people who would appear to be the ones that are more or less pulling the strings, okay? I mean, I would look at this particular, group of people as being the ones who are most likely, okay, to be the ones that are involved, that are pulling the strings, that are deciding what happens where, who comes and decides all these things. Now, these individuals, okay, are also from a variety of backgrounds. But once again, there's a representative of Deutsche Bank who's part of the steering committee, okay? Let's see here, some other individuals. Now, from the United States, it would appear that there's a couple different people from some think tanks, as well as the president of Thiel Capital, Peter Thiel. So there's a number of individuals here as well. And of course, as I mentioned, David Rockefeller is a member advisory group member. So, the question, I guess, comes down to is whether or not the Bilderberg group is in fact looking to control or is in fact controlling world affairs. I'm really not sure of the answer to that question. But it is bothersome that you have people with that much economic, political power, and have that kind of influence. It's bothersome that they could, in fact, meet behind closed doors and pretend to be open about their discussions when, in fact, they are really not open about what they do. That is the disturbing aspect of the Bilderberg group. So maybe there is something here, maybe there isn't. There are a number of people in the mainstream who really look at this as just another excuse for the wealthy and the powerful to just have a good time. And there are others who look at this and say, well, they meet behind closed doors, they're discussing all these agendas that directly impact world affairs, and they tend to be representatives of democratic or nations, republic governments, and yet they do not really bring in the people's interest in this. They shut the people's interest out because they don't want the people to know what it is they in fact discuss. What is it that they discuss behind these doors that they feel that people would be so greatly offended by? That is the question. Well, that is all I have for you today. And I urge everybody, make your own minds up about this. And there's a number of people who are out here discussing the Bilderberg group. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but I'm not going to decide for you what I think that you should do. If you should believe that this is a legitimate concern or not, that's up to you. Go out there, do the research yourself, make up your own minds, draw your own conclusions. I'm suspicious, to say the least. Whether or not I'm fully behind it, I don't know, but it's certainly a group that I would not dismiss entirely. Okay. Now, just as a reminder, once again, check out the social media pages. I try to update some stuff there, and I'll certainly post some links. Try to find a link to that one creepy picture that I had been looking at the last couple months. For those of you who haven't seen it, and also, going into the month of June now, I'm going to shift away a little bit from some of the conspiracy shows because I've done quite a few here now. So I'm going to kind of mix it back up again a little bit. And next week's show is one that I'm really pumped about. I'm really excited about. This is a show now that I've been planning for probably about a month. I caught wind of this, and it seems like it'd be a really great story. It's the Bennington Triangle. That's what I'm going to be discussing next Friday on the Web of Conspiracy. Once again, I just want to thank everybody who's continuing to support the show. It's greatly appreciated, and I'll be back with you again next week.